everybody, welcome. This is The Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. Today I have a very special guest. Today I have Shiraz. Shiraz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great being here.
So Shiraz, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? A little bit about your background, who you are, where you live.
Wow. Okay. I'm from South Africa, but currently living in Toronto in Canada. And my background in how did I get to be where I am, I guess. So this background is like a huge topic.
Well, let's start. Your young years, your formative years, as they call them. How do you start out?
Started off pretty well. We came to Canada to escape apartheid. And my dad is a doctor, so we did fairly well growing up. We never had any money issues. And I grew up in a family where this uncle was a doctor, this uncle was a doctor, this uncle was a doctor. So, and of course, people are saying, oh, when he grows up, he's going to be a doctor like his dad. That was just the thing. And yeah, and things were going really well. And I actually started to go into, I didn't want to be like a doctor. I started pursuing molecular genetics when I went to university. But then at the age of 22, I got rheumatoid arthritis. And not just rheumatoid arthritis, like every single joint in my body. And very rapidly, I went from being a bodybuilder to just lying in bed in pain. And as the years went by, I would come out of it, it would go into remission, I'd get some stuff done, and then it would just hit me again. And then I'd be back in bed. And I tried different ways to conquer it, and nothing was working. And it just got worse and worse. My body was deteriorating. I was losing mobility. And right now, like that's the mobility in my wrist there. Right. So that was just my life then. And finally, I was having a discussion with my dad. And I said, look, is there anything we can do about this? Because this is ridiculous. And he said, well, I've heard of this program called combined therapy. And it's over in a place in India. And they've had success with multiple illnesses. And I was like, multiple illnesses? Because it's usually like there's a cancer place or an arthritis place or a diabetes place. And he goes, no, they work with everything. And I'm like, okay, that sounds intriguing. So get on a plane, go over to India, go into this program. And because it's in India and my dad's a very spiritual guy, I expect it to be some sort of Reiki thing where the guy's like doing energy work on me. And all he did was talk to me for 2 weeks. And he went through my entire life story. And I thought, this is really weird. I came here to get healed. And this guy's just talking, oh, what'd you do when you were 6? And then what happened? And what happened at the age of 10? And finally, after 2 weeks of talking to this guy, and he taught me like breathing exercises and stuff like that, but nothing was really changing anything. He finally said, so here's the problem. You believe you're responsible for everyone in your life. And I'm like, no, I don't. And he goes, no, you do. And he said, what happened was when you were really young, your mom got sick. And as a little kid, you're like 8 years old and you thought, I need to help my mom out. I need to be responsible for my mom. And so you took on this belief, I got to be responsible for my mom. But then you realized your mom couldn't take care of your brother and sister too. So you have to be responsible for them. Wow. But then you added in your dad and you added in your friends and you added in your cousins. And he said, and you weren't actually responsible for them because there's only so much a little kid can do, right? But in your mind, you were now responsible. And because you kept adding people, you eventually created a belief that you have to be responsible for every person in your life. And I'm like, well, that's messed up. And he goes, well, but that's what people do. This is how it just comes about. And I said, okay, let's say that's true. I know I'm a very responsible person, but I don't think I'm responsible for everyone. That's just crazy. And he goes, this is just what's going on in your subconscious, because the subconscious doesn't like to sort things out. It likes blanket statements, not I'm responsible for these 3 people. It's like I'm responsible. It could be I'm responsible for family, but you went with everyone. So I said, well, fine. What's that got to do with the arthritis? And he said, well, you don't want to be responsible for everyone. I went, yeah. So if you're lying in bed in pain, you don't have to be responsible for anyone and no one can call you on it. It's the solution to a problem you don't even know you have. And I'm like, what?
Whoa.
And he said, that's what almost every chronic illness is. It's a solution to the problem that a person has, except they don't know it. And the illness just keeps them from having to experience the problem. And I thought, okay, but then what you're saying is if I just start being responsible for me, I shouldn't have arthritis anymore. He goes, if you actually mean it deep down, not just say it, you've got to mean it, that you're not going to be responsible for anyone but you, then you have no need for the arthritis anymore because that's the only reason it's there. So I said, fine. this day forward, not going to be responsible for anyone but me. I woke up the next morning, no pain, no inflammation, more mobility. And I'm like, where's the arthritis? It's gone. Like, what the hell just happened? And that was it. That's where it all started. And from there, I realized, well, this isn't just about illness. This is what keeps people from having money, from having great relationships, from having success. It's all these unconscious blocks. And often you don't know. You think you've got a block, but that block is a symptom of something that's deeper, and it could be several layers deeper. But if you can find that linchpin belief and change it, you can have almost instantaneous results.
Wow. So we have something where I come from. My background is, if you're not dealing with the root, you're dealing with the fruit, right?
Yep.
So typically we deal with fruits, right? I have this problem, I have that problem. Those are fruits. Mm-hmm. So how do you get someone, let's say someone's listening and say, okay, I really want to be successful, but I haven't been yet.
Yeah.
So how do they become successful?
So there's two major questions you can ask yourself. Number one, what is the benefit of me not getting successful? Right? So there's often this benefit in staying exactly where you are. And the other question is, what would be horrible if I became successful? Right? And one of those questions is going to lead you down the path to that answer. And there's some really, really common things. Like I've seen people, it's just, I talk about, okay, well, what if you got that success? And they said, oh, well, then people are going to get jealous. And I don't want my family and friends being jealous of my success. I'm like, well, then you don't create success, so no one gets jealous. It's easy. Or it's going to be so much work to maintain that success. Okay, well, then don't do the work.
Well, let's talk about money, because usually it's not always true, but people mentally equate money with success. It just happens. So the reason you don't have money is because you don't want anyone asking you for money. You don't want to feel guilty because you have more money. Yep. You don't want anyone to think you're a show off, right? Because you have money. And then you don't become successful because you're afraid that someone else is going to think that you're a show off or a big shot or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and the other side of it is they're afraid that it'll change who they are, right?
Yeah.
And I've always found that money makes you more of who you are. It just amplifies it. Having money or having lack is an amplifier of who you are.
Yes. But people don't think that. They see people change as a result of money. And what they don't realize is you've got these different groups of people. So you've got a person that's genuinely good, gets more money and just becomes more good. Right? Then you get these people that are not good. They're jerks, and they get more money. They become bigger jerks.
But then you have the people who get money. They were good. They looked like they were good before.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what happens is it really uncovers who you really are. It doesn't. You might have looked good before. It's kind of like that car you go look at the lot. It looks really great. And then you take it out for a test drive, and you realize the engine's jacked up, the suspension's jacked up. It always wants to turn right when you want to turn left. So that's what money does. It shows you who that person really is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell the people how to start. I understand you said the two questions, but give people practical steps on how to start that introspection so they can get some conclusion.
Well, when you ask those questions and when you see other people's success, if there's a reaction coming out, then that means there's a belief in there. There's a block that you've got. And sometimes it's really a simple reaction. So if you say, well, how much are you making this year? 50,000. Well, what if you made 500,000? They go, whoa. Well, then you automatically know they've got a block to $500,000, right? Like, well, that's a big jump. Where are we going? So that's something you want to look at, right? And whenever that emotional impact comes up, there's a block. That's the indication, is the emotions.
Wow. So you woke up the next morning, a lot less pain, more mobility. And so how has your life been from there?
My life's been good. So Originally, I went back to doing what I had done. I had actually dropped out of university from molecular genetics and gone into computers, and I became a software designer and project manager. And so I just went to that after everything was fixed, but that wasn't where I was meant to be. And then the neat thing is the story takes another turn. Is when I got back, The Secret had just come out. Right? And so I'm watching The Secret and I'm listening to these people. I'm going, oh, some of what they're talking about is the principles I learned over in India. And so, this is interesting. And one of the things that occurred to me is I've always had a six-figure salary. And I realized there was a story behind that because in high school, my buddies and I were all talking about the six-figure salary. And in my brain, even though I keep saying six figures, I'm thinking $100,000 because it's just when you cross that line. But six figures is all the way up to $999,000, right? But I was always just
and 99 cents.
Yeah. But my brain was just like six figures. So once I crossed the $100,000, I went up higher, but it went quickly to the 100,000 this way, and then slowed down to this slight increase. And then I thought, I'm focused on six figures. What if I went seven figures? So then I said, okay, we've got the techniques I learned. We've got The Secret movie. I'm going to go and get onto coaching programs with some people from The Secret. And I'm going to go from six figures to seven figures. And what was funny is like Bob Proctor, I took his coaching program, and Joe Vitale. And so I figured I can't lose with this. And I went from six figures to zero figures. And 2 years I made zero. And I was just like, what is going on? And these are world-renowned coaches. And I'm like, are their programs crap? What? And I didn't know what was going on. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get a bunch of friends together and I'm going to coach them. I'm going to teach them what I learned in these coaching programs. And if they get results, then it's me.
So it's you and
right? And so
let's stop right there for a second.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there for a second, because that's a smart. You were quick to realize something. Typically, like, you know, if one out of every three people has a broke friend and two of your friends are wealthy, you know you're the broke one, right?
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day is you had a realization, if the information works for someone else, then there's something wrong with me. Yes. And most people don't realize that. You know, they go from job to job and saying, well, that job was bad because everyone hated me. The other job bad, they talked about me. Wait a second. You were at that job and that job and that job and that job, and none of them worked out. Well, first off, jobs don't work out, but that's a whole other issue. But if you couldn't work the job like you're supposed to, there's something wrong with you, not the people, not the job. So back to your story. I'm sorry. I just want to interject that because I think it's important that people get that in their mind.
And what was interesting is I actually met Bob Proctor in person. I had a meeting with him at his house during that time. And I told him that I had done this. And he said, I would just remember when he heard the story, he goes, oh my God, that's exactly what I would have done. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. That's good. Coming from Bob Proctor. But I coached.
I'm still not making money.
I coached the 7 people and every one of them got results. One guy actually went from $20,000 a year to $200,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, the coaching programs work. These guys are legit. That's good. It's me. What the hell is going on? And it's because even though that thing happened in India, I hadn't really locked on to that's what works for me. Because the coaching programs is take this step, follow these things. But with me, it's just find that belief and shift it. And then reality just starts to change. And like physical reality starts to change. And I didn't realize how powerful this was, because then later on, another thing that happened to cause me to get to this path is I got a letter in the mail from the CRA, which is the Canadian equivalent of the IRS. You owe us $40,000 in back taxes.
So let me get this right. You went from making $100,000 a year plus, or $100,000 a year, down to zero. But now, not only were you at zero, you owed money.
No. Because when you're used to making $100,000 a year and you go to zero, thinking you're going to get it back, you keep spending like you're making $100,000 a year. So I was at minus 80, okay, in credit card debt. And then the 40 came on.
Wow. So you talk about negative 120, really.
Right.
So, yeah. Wow.
So that was just like, what is happening here? And I was like, okay, so this is crazy. And I went and I was talking to my accountant. I was talking to financial advisors. And by this point, I had gotten a job that was paying decent money. But with that extra debt, I would just be in debt for the rest of my life with it slightly increasing every year. And I'm like, what do I do? And they say, well, you're just gonna have to pay it for the rest of your life. And I'm like, what? And they said, well, you have to hope your salary increases. So now you're making money instead of losing money. I'm like, what if I just like go work a minimum wage job? And said, well, then you can declare bankruptcy. But then you have to be in bankruptcy for a certain amount of time before you can get back out of it. That's just a big deal. I'm like, okay. And then one of the things I'd learned, and this is what I talk to my clients a lot about, is that people's stories, there's beliefs, which is where you just believe something is, like the sky is blue. And stories are things that happen over and over again, right? And both the beliefs and the stories are contagious, right? So you can be told a story and then buy that story. And so you start living from that. And that's something that happens with a lot of people. But you could be in the same room as someone and catch their story and not even realize it. And so it's crazy. Like it sounds like completely bizarre, but I've had people in my workshops where I talk about this, and I remember one workshop, this girl said, oh, you were talking about how you can buy everything, like not just a feeling or an idea, but like an illness you can buy, a money problem you can buy. And she said, I had a headache coming in here. And I was like, wait, did I buy the headache from someone on the way here? Because I was fine when I left the house. And then I used the technique you showed me and the headache went away. It wasn't my headache.
That is amazing. So you're telling me you can catch whatever by osmosis?
Yes.
That's funny.
And it's crazy. And you've got evidence of this, because have you ever been in a situation where you're like, what came over me? I never do that. I never act like that.
Yeah, it happens.
You stepped into someone else's story for a short period of time and came back out of it.
And from my background is, I really think that we limit ourselves to our physical bodies, right?
Yeah.
Really not even the story. It's the spirit behind the story, right? Mm-hmm. Or the spirit behind the headache, or the spirit behind the disease, the spirit behind the success, the spirit behind whatever it is. You just caught that spirit. You, for some reason, your antenna was open and you picked up that signal, and you decided, in the subconscious level, you decided to receive that spirit, right? Whether it be sickness, success, whatever it is. So how do you, so now it makes me ask a question. We'll get back to your story.
Yep.
But how do you turn off your antenna so you can keep yourself safe, but then know when to turn it on when you start feeling success around you?
So my advice actually is to always have it off. Like, while it's good to buy stories of success, ultimately you just want to be you. You don't want to be buying everyone else's stuff. You just want to create success for you and be the transmitter of success, and let everyone else buy it, because then it's independent. You can trust everything. Because if you're buying someone's success story, you might step out of it. And then you're like, all of a sudden my success went away. Because it wasn't really your success. You want it to be yours, right?
Right. But the stories do help you. Like, listening to someone else's story do help you overcome.
Yeah. So being around people with success stories helps. It helps get you into that zone. But ultimately you want to be in there on your own, whether people are around you or not. But absolutely, the more successful people you hang out with, the more their stories bring you up and help create your own story. So yeah, absolutely.
Back to your story. Meanwhile,
meanwhile, I've got this $40,000 debt out of nowhere, and I thought, is this even mine? Did I buy this story from someone else? And so I said, okay, you know what? If it's not my story, I'm going to just let it go. I'm done with the story. I'm stepping out of it. And that's the phrase I use for my clients: just step out of the story. And so when I did that, I actually felt lighter. Like physically, like, what just happened? Something shifted. So then I went to my accountants and I said, listen, let's solve this $40,000 problem, because we've been over this for weeks. There's no way. And we've tried all these things. And he looked at me and goes, why are you smiling? This is a serious matter. And I'm smiling because I'm like, I know deep down it's gone. I don't know how it's gone, but it's gone. And then finally, it's like the awareness hit him. And he goes, oh my God, if we file this form, and then he just starts going into this accounting jargon, right? And he says, then
just do it.
Yeah, he goes, you won't have to pay the $40,000, but you will have to pay a $500 late filing fee. Are you okay paying the $500 late filing fee?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we pay that now? Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah. So
somebody who's just starting out in business, or in being an author, or being in an influencer on social media, whatever the case may be, they're just getting started. how would you tell them to build their framework for what they're doing?
Build their framework. Okay, you have to be a little more
Well,
specific.
like how would you tell them to perceive? Like what I'm getting from you is a lot of what you talk about. A lot of what you're talking about is the perception, right? Building up one's perception so they perceive things the proper way versus most people are on autopilot, right? It's a
Yeah,
rainy day. Oh, this day is gonna be bad. It's a sunny day. This day is gonna be great.
yeah,
Man, a rainy day can be just as great as a sunny day because without rainy days we don't get things to grow, right? So
yeah.
it's perception. I think most of what you're talking about is perception, and even at a subconscious level, you got to build yourself up in your perception in the subconscious. So how would you tell people or ask people to build themselves up subconsciously?
Okay, so their first thing is intention. When you intend to do something and you say it's just going to happen, then it's going to happen. And a lot of people don't get that because it's a weird thing because it's not determination, it's intention, and there's a different energy to it. Because determination is like, I'm going to make this happen. I don't care what it does. I'm going to make it happen. And there's a sort of force to it, and that can actually create resistance to that thing happening. But when you're just sure it's going to happen, like when you get into your car and you turn the key, or like actually more when you get home and you turn the key in the lock, because sometimes people have bad cars, so it might not be the right example. But when you turn the lock, you expect it to open. There's like no doubt. There's no like this time it won't, and this time like it's just that's what happens. And when you can get like that with your success, oh, it's just going to happen. And it doesn't have to be a how in there. I don't know how, but it's just going to happen. That's all. It's what it's like. Sun comes up tomorrow. It always does. It just happens. That energy causes things to happen.
Wow. Wow. I remember one time, I'll tell you a story of mine. I had filed my taxes and I was expecting a return. I've been waiting for a little while and I was like, and I just felt it inside, right? I said, today it's going to come. This is back when we used to have to wait in the mail for our tax return,
Yeah.
not like we get direct deposit now. So, so I said, it's going to come today. And lo and behold, I drove home to my apartment, opened up the mailbox, and it was sitting right there in the mailbox.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, wow. So how do you get yourself to a place where you can trigger that in yourself?
It takes practice, and it is like building a muscle to get there. But there's two things you want to do. Is number one, you have to let go of evidence that things aren't working, right? Because what we do is we look at the evidence of things not working, and then we create the story around it that these things don't work. But there's also evidence that things are working. But when you create the story they aren't, you ignore all the times that it just becomes white noise, and you just focus on the times that it is working or isn't working.
In other words, you're canceling out what is working once you start focusing on the things that aren't working.
Yeah. And then once you're focused on them, you cause more and more things not to work and less things to actually work. But even when things work, you don't acknowledge them. But when you flip it around and start focusing on the things that are working, then the exact opposite happens.
Wow.
And more things work. And then you can start creating your own stories. Like I have a story that even if something goes bad, somehow it works out in my favor. Right? That's just my story. And I've been sitting in that for a while now, and it's just amazing to watch it unfold. And I remember there was actually a class I was teaching, and I that day I taught that exact principle and how it can work. And then I left the class, and I go out to the street, and my car is gone. And I'm with one of my buddies, and I'm like, "Where's my car?" And he's like, "Oh, it's gone." And I'm like, "Wait, what day is it?" He goes, "It's Friday." And it's like, "Oh my God, I usually park there on Saturday, and you're allowed to park on Saturday, but Friday's got rush hour. I've been towed." And he's like, "Well, I guess we're going to have to go to the impound yard." And I'm like, "Yeah, fine. Okay." And then he looks and he goes, "Isn't that your car across the street?" And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "No, I parked here." He goes, "Yeah, but that's your car across the street." I said, "There's no way they'd tow my car across the street." And we walked over there. I go, "This is my car." Holy crap. They towed my car across the street.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
There's so many things. Like I call one of the things you were talking about the grasshopper principle, right? In Hebrew tradition, they sent spies into the land before they went into what they were supposed to take over, and they saw the giants that lived in the land, and they saw themselves. This exact text, it says, they saw themselves as grasshoppers, so they became as grasshoppers to the people of the land.
Yeah.
So, in other words, your perception creates your reality.
Yes.
And that's how let's talk about your book, How to Rewrite Reality.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a good segue right into there. So what caused you to write the book?
It was actually interesting because my business is going well, but I wanted it to really build up. And as soon as I had that thought, I was at a workshop, and the workshop was how to get more visibility by writing a book. And so I thought, okay, I'll take this workshop, I'll write the book. But when I wrote the book, so many realizations came out, and the metaphors of how this all works just went down into the book. It was a whole new terminology that all my clients are using now that didn't exist before the book. And it was just incredible.
So, what are you up to now? You got the book, you got, I take it you do coaching and stuff now. Mm-hmm. What are you doing currently?
Currently, I have my big thing, right? Well, there's two big things. It's the monthly magic program, where I have a monthly program that creates magic in your life, monthly magic. And that's where most of my clients are. But I actually did a workshop or a coaching session with this woman, Samantha Frazier, just before Christmas. And she's starting a organization called the Lifehouse Project, which helps women that have been sexually abused or sexually trafficked to recover. And they go through this big program. And after working on her, she's just like, oh my God, you need to work with these women. So this year, that's where all the effort is going, is to, we're getting the program in order. We're going to start taking some women, put them through the program, and just start changing their reality. But with the Lifehouse Project, that's my role. But there's also, it's 4 pillars. There's a mental health pillar, a education pillar, a physical health pillar, and a spirituality pillar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So where can people find you at, Shiraz?
For me, if you go to shirazshifts.com, so just like Shiraz Shifts Your Reality, shirazshifts.com, then that is my digital business card. So from there, you can get to my website, my YouTube videos, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, everything's there.
Wow. Wow. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote, it's interesting. It's a quote I used to use, and I don't know if I made it up or I heard it somewhere, but it was, practice reverse paranoia, pretend everyone's out to help you.
I like that. That's good. Practice reverse paranoia, pretend everyone's out to help you. That is awesome. Any last words for the people before we go?
Oh, wow, I could say so much, but I think the big thing is trust, like really trust that everything's going to be okay, because you're the one creating your reality. And whenever something feels like it's off and it's suddenly changed, 98% of the time, you've just bought someone else's story. Get out of it right away. Everything will switch back to normal, like faster than you can imagine. It's amazing.
Wow. Wow. I want to thank my guest, Shiraz, for being on today. Man, what a great show. Please like, subscribe, share, and download. Whether you're watching or listening, I thank you for watching. Thank you, Shiraz, for being on today.
Thank you for